Okay, so today we will be dealing with the period of Civil War, okay, or the Civil War literature. Actually, after Jacobean age, we have seen King James first, that is King James VI of Scotland, who came to England and known to be King James first. His period ends by 1625. Okay. And thereafter we have Charles first. Okay, Charles first from 1625 to 1649. That is the ruling period of Charles first. Not his lifespan, but ruling period of Charles first. Actually, the problem is this particular age, that means after Jacobean age, this 25 to 49 is also known as Caroline age, okay, because Charles first, that name, just like James first, Jacobean, Charles first, Caroline. That is also a possibility of dividing the literary period, but as a civil war is very important, we usually categorize this as like the period of civil war, period of sorry. During the period of Charles I, actually, this civil war takes place in England. So let us first see the historical background of England during the reign of Charles I. Charles I was a very we don't know whether to say he's famous or notorious. Of course, he's notorious in the context of Britain. So Charles I ruled not only England, but England, Scotland. Yeah.
Some historical background of Civil War.
Of that period, Charles I period, starting with 1625 to 49, and that includes the Civil War also. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So, yeah, he ruled England, Scotland, and Ireland together. He was the king for all these three geographical regions, and he was the one who believed in the divine rights of king. Hope you remember what this divine right of king, because they believe that they are, that means the kings or the royal people, the nobility, they people are the chosen people by God. And God has given them the power to rule. No one can question them. So they do not believe in democracy. They do not believe in others' opinions and nothing, but they are thinking like they are divine people. They got the divine right, divine power to be kings. Okay, so he was a person like that, and he was a high Anglican, and he resembled this Roman Catholics. Those of the Roman Catholics he resembled. So he is totally against the Protestants or the Puritans. And what is very important about this person is like he was not at all a comfortable king for the people. He introduced so many unpopular taxes. Okay, unpopular taxes. Even now we know that this GST and all these things, the imposition of such things, how it makes people very irritated and frustrated. So likewise, he was continuously imposing unpopular taxes one by one, and it actually, made the people very restless. And the parliament usually naturally opposed Charles first, and they demanded for a constitutional monarchy. Constitutional monarchy means there will be a constitution, and it should be accepted by a group of people, that is parliament, as well as the church and the king. And the king should rule accordingly. That is the constitutional monarchy. And the parliament put forward the idea of a constitutional monarchy, but this person, Charles I, refused it. Charles I was not ready to accept the constitutional monarchy. And you know what? He ruled without parliament. He said, I don't want any parliament. I am the king. I am the divine power and everything. So I don't want the parliament and anything. So I'll be ruling alone. And he ruled without the parliament for 11 years. Okay, 11 years. And this is called 11 years of tyranny. This particular period, that is 1629. He started ruling England in 1625, and within this 4 years, he made so many issues and problems, and the parliament opposed to him. And in 1629, he's proclaiming that hereafter I don't want any parliament. Okay, I won't be involving parliament in the what to say, monarchy, like this ruling affairs. So that particular period extending from 29 to 40 is known as 11 years of tyranny. That is a monopoly power. No one was included in the power. He didn't listen to anyone. He didn't listen to the public opinion. It was not at all democratic. So something like that. Definitely what happens, so many issues will be following after that. Okay, and the first problem was bishops' war, and that's how this 11 years of tyranny actually led to the civil war in England. And before the civil war, actually, this bishops' war happened. Bishops' war is considered to be a prelude or a beginning to the civil war. Bishops' War happened in 1639 and 1640 with a small break. Actually, this is because of this 11 years of tyranny, because he ruled without the parliament. He had his own, rules and regulations. And all of a sudden, today, a new rule. Okay, you have to be like this. Likewise, he made the people struggle like anything. Actually, what does this bishops' war is exactly means? Charles wanted to establish an episcopal system of church governance in Scotland. Okay, Scotland with the bishops. Actually, bishops' war is happening in Scotland. In the beginning, I told you he was ruling England, Scotland, and Ireland together. So he wanted an episcopal system, governing system in Scotland. Episcopal system means only bishops will be there in the ruling community. Usually it is not the way. It's a what to say, like other people also, the ministers and these parliamentarians will also be there, and both the groups, the church with bishops as well as the parliament, these people, they both will be making decisions for the governance. But this person wanted an exclusive episcopal system in Scotland. But the Scottish leaders, they wanted a Presbyterian. Presbyterian is totally opposite to episcopal system. In episcopal, only bishops will be there. But in Presbyterian system, both bishops as well as the senior ministers and everyone will be there. And they wanted a Presbyterian system of church governance without bishops. Okay, so this conflict actually happened in Scotland, and that led to the bishops' war, which happened in Scotland. And this is considered to be a prelude to the civil war. So naturally, civil war also happened. By 1640, this bishops' war is at the peak. So after 2 years, we can see the civil war in England happens in two phases. First is like 42 to 46. And then there is a small break of 2 years. Then again 48 again started, and till 54 we have another phase of civil war in England. So this civil war broke out. And what happened? Charles I was held in captivity. There were many people who were the supporters of the king, and they are known as the Cavalier. Hope you remember the Cavalier poets and all. So Cavaliers means those who support the king and his divine right of power. And there are other group, especially with, with the leadership of the Puritans, and they were against this tyranny of the king, and they were high in number. So as a result of the civil war, what happened? Charles I was held in captivity from 1647. Can you just imagine, a king is under captivity? The people captivated even the king, who is still ruling. And from 1647 onwards, he was under captivity, and he was put under trial from 20th January 1649. All these happened for the first time and the last time in England. Okay, all this happened only with Charles I. That's why we consider him to be very notorious, and that's what the importance of Charles I. So the historical background has much relevance while we study the literary history also. So he was put under trial from 20th of January 1649, and he was condemned to death in his absence on 26th January, and he beheaded. He got beheaded on 30th January 1649. A king is beheaded. A king is executed by the people of the same country. Okay, so actually, this civil war was against, ultimately, why civil war? Civil war was against the divine right theory of king. It is not only the king, but also the parliament. The democratic power is also involved. Okay, people also have the right to say something, to express something. Their concerns are to be acknowledged. So these kinds of issues ultimately led to the civil war during this period. And you can see the golden age of drama and literature was over by then because of all these conflicts. Religion seemed to be diffused because this Queen Elizabeth was maintaining a balance between all these different groups like Puritans, Protestants, Catholics, and everyone. But during the period of James I itself, it got destroyed, and this person, Charles I, completely destroyed all these balances. And science was still unpopular during that time. Science couldn't overcome the religious spirits of that time. So everything was in a confusion. And this civil war happened. So by 1649, we can see that the king is beheaded. There is no more a king in England. So what happens? The period from 1649 to 53 is known as the first period of the Commonwealth of England. Okay, Commonwealth means it's like a free state, like there is no one is ruling. Okay, no one is ruling. And 53 to 58, protectorate, the protectorate under Oliver Cromwell. Okay, Oliver Cromwell came by 53 to 58. Protectorate means a protector will be there, a lord protector will be there. He's not the king, he's not a nobleman by heredity, like the kings are born to the royal families and all those things. No, and these protectors may not be from such royal families, but they are on charge of the welfare of the country. So that is what called protectorate, and Lord Protector Oliver Cromwell was on charge during this time. That is 53 to 58. Cromwell, here you can see Cromwell belonged to the gentry class, not to the noble class or the royal class. But he too believed in class distinctions. He was also a person who believed that class distinctions are very important, and class distinctions are the cornerstone of the well-being of the country. So he maintained it. So his was also a monopolic power. Okay, a monopolic power, and it was resented. It was treated with disgrace and disagreement by most of the people. And he was actually a ruthless idealist. He was not a practical person who understood the conflicts and confusions or the problems of the people, but he was an idealist. There were so many ideals that was ruling his brain, and he thought like, okay, all these are correct, I can rule according to the ideals. He thought like that. He was a ruthless idealist rather than a practical person. And then we can see that he was succeeded by 58 or 59. This person was succeeded by his son, that is Richard Cromwell. Okay, but Richard Cromwell was an ineffectual person. He was not that strong as his father Oliver Cromwell, so he could rule only for 8 months. So people got completely distressed by the reign of Richard Cromwell. And then they thought like, okay, the monarchy should be restored. The king should be there. Then that is safe for England. This protectorship is not that effective. So they called back Charles II, that is the son of Charles I, who was in exile in France, and restored him to the throne in 1660. That is what we call the Restoration. Okay, there starts the age of Restoration. So 25 to 49, it is the age of, maybe we can divide it like this. After Jacobean age, we can say maybe Caroline age. That is the period of Charles I, 25 to 49. And then again, from there to 1660, it was the period of Lord, like period of protectorate, likewise. But it is so confusing. So usually we say after Jacobean age, it is the Civil War period. Okay, because from 25 onwards, Charles I was creating so many issues and reasons for the Civil War. So that's why we call that age in that way. So this is the historical background of that period. Who was the king after James I? Queen Elizabeth. After that, James I. And after that, from 25 onwards, Charles I. And Charles I is the person who made so much of confusions in the religion. He didn't want the parliament to be accompanied in the governance. So he had 11 years of tyranny. That is very important, this 11 years of tyranny, 29 to 40. So after that, people were so much of obsessed with this kind of, or they were completely fed up with this kind of ruling. So the Civil War broke out. They captivated the king, they trialed the king, and they beheaded the king. And after that, there was no one to take care of the country. So it was a period of Commonwealth for England. That means no one is ruling. As a king, no one is ruling. And then Lord Protector Oliver Cromwell came, and he was also not a comfortable protector. He was also a ruthless idealist. Monopoly power was there. And after his death, Richard Cromwell came. That is his son, but he was highly ineffectual. So he ruled only for 8 months. So after that, people decided to bring back Charles II, who was in exile in France. And by 1660, they restored. Okay, this is how it goes. Now, let's just see the literary background and how it reflected in the works of the people during that time. So when we were discussing the poetry and prose of the 17th century, we just mentioned the Cavalier poets, right? The Cavalier poets. Cavalier poets, just like the name mentions, this particular word is not only for poets, but those people who supported in literature or in ideals or whatever it is, supported the king, is known as cavaliers. Okay, so cavalier poets means, so from the name itself, you can understand what kind of poets they were. So they were, or their poems celebrated the idealized relationship between the king and the queen. King means Charles I, and his queen was Henrietta Maria, and she was a Catholic, Roman Catholic. Okay, so their idealized relationship was celebrated in the poems of these particular poets, Cavalier poets. Actually, Ben Jonson is the influence or the inspiration for all these poets. And they upheld Platonism, Platonic love. What is Platonic love? Spiritual love. Physical love is not that important, but spiritual love. If two persons can be very close, if they can be like the soulmates, that is what called Platonism or Platonic love. Still, I think nowadays also this term is very popular in the social media, like Platonic partner, Platonic relationship, something like that. And but still, though the Cavalier poets were upholding the Platonism or the Platonic love, sometimes some people like John Suckling, or some people questioned the idealized depictions also. So you can see some minute questionings or the challenges against this kind of idealized love between the king and the queen and all those things. So this is what actually Cavalier. Who are Cavalier poets? The Cavalier poets were those poets who celebrated the idealized relationship between the king and the queen, that is Charles I and Henrietta Maria. And let us just have a glance on the popular Cavalier poets of that time. First is Robert. Actually, there is a speciality for this Cavalier poets. They were not only inspired by Ben Jonson, but also by John Donne. Okay, John Donne, the metaphysical poet. So most of the Cavalier poets are at the same time they are Cavaliers as well as metaphysical poets. So you can see metaphysical poems as well as elements when we take the session, or when we go through the session metaphysical poets, you can see all these people, all these names are repeating there. Okay, so Robert Herrick, 1591 to 1674, he was a Cavalier as well as a metaphysical poet. Okay, and he combined this classical paganism and English folk themes. Hesperides is the famous work. Actually, this is a collection. It is said that he has written more than 2,500 poems, and half of those poems are included in this particular collection. So this is the most popular collection of Robert Herrick, Hesperides, which was published in 1648. Okay. And Noble Numbers is another collection. That is a collection of devotional poems. Then he has written so many works like Two Daffodils. See, we have Daffodils by William Wordsworth, and Two Daffodils is a work by Robert Herrick. To Violets, to Electra, to the Western Wind. Okay, or To the West Wind is another work by Shelley. So you can just connect it with the titles. To the Western Wind, The Funeral Rites of the Rose, Upon Julia's Clothes. These are some of the works written by Robert Herrick. Actually, what is very important in this case is like you have to identify whether this person is a Cavalier poet or a metaphysical poet. So when we say Herrick, you have to identify, okay, he has written metaphysical poetry as well as Cavalier poems. Okay. Then Thomas Carreau. Again, see, you can see disciple of Johnson and Donne. That means he's a Cavalier poet as well as a metaphysical poet. Okay. Many of his poems are addressed to Celia. Celia is his mistress. Okay. And he was so much in love with his mistress Celia. And most of his poems are addressed to Celia. He that loves a rosy cheek, a rupture, to sex harm. To sex harm is a country house poem. So all these are the major poems of this person, but at the same time, they have written so many metaphysical poems also. Then comes Edmund Waller. Okay, Edmund Waller is a famous wit and a poet, and he was an orator. Okay, he was popular in many ways. He elected to parliament when he was only 16, 16. Only when he was 16 years old, he was elected to the parliament. Then he traveled in France, Italy with his friends and diarist John Evelyn, and he got so much of exposure like that. Okay, and he has become the model for 18th century ideals of literature. So many people consider him to be a model, like the 18th century people or the 18th century ideals of literature. They consider Edmund Waller to be a model. And his poems are On a Girdle, Go Lovely Rose, On St. James Park. That is a topographical poem which gives importance to the topography. So these kinds of poems are written by Edmund Waller. Then comes John Suckling. Okay, John Suckling. Suckling is another person. Just one second. Yeah, I was telling like though they were idealizing the relationship between the king and the queen, there were some people who even questioned them, and Suckling was one among them. He is also influenced by Johnson and Donne. That means he was a Cavalier as well as a metaphysical poets. Okay, the wits or the sessions of the poets. Then Aglora, he was a not only a poet, not exclusively a poet, he was a playwright too. Okay, this Aglora is a tragedy written by John Suckling. And the Goblins is a musical comedy, just like The Tempest by Shakespeare. Then Ballad Upon a Wedding, Why So Pale, all these are his other poems. So Suckling. Then Richard Lovelace. Richard Lovelace, 1618 to 1658. He gained a romantic reputation. He was a very handsome son. Richard Lovelace was a very handsome son of a wealthy Kentish knight. His father was a knight, so he was born into such a noble family. And he gained a very romantic reputation. But he got imprisoned during the Civil War for fighting on behalf of the king. Of course, he is a cavalier poet. So he might have supported the king. He fought for the king. I told you, no, during the Civil War, there were so many people who were in support of the king and who were against the king. So he was a person who was in support of the king. But when even the king was captivated, definitely his supporters also would have been captivated at that time. So this person got imprisoned during the Civil War for supporting the king. And he's a combination. He had combinations of Petrarchan and metaphysical style together. Okay, of course, he is influenced by Donne again. All these people are metaphysical as well as cavaliers. And he combined this Petrarchan elements with metaphysical style. And such poems are To Lucasta, Going to the Wars, To Althea, From the Prison. Okay, all these are some of the works by Richard Lovelace. So these are the Cavalier poets, the major Cavalier poets, that is Richard Lovelace, John Suckling, Edmund Waller, Thomas Carew, Robert Herrick. 5 people. Okay, you can sometimes like somehow connect their names and you can keep this in your minds. Who are the Cavaliers, as well as they are metaphysical poets too. Robert Herrick, Carew, Waller, Suckling, and Lovelace. Now comes an important figure during that time, that is John Milton. Okay, John Milton, whose lifespan extends from 1608 to 1674, comparatively a longer lifespan. So he has seen James I, the Jacobean period, the Caroline period, the Restoration, and everything. So he was popular even during his time, and so he had to undergo several changes, like this political changes and how it influenced him, his works, and everything. That is something very important. Okay. So Milton was a very lonely figure, not belonging to any movement. That is something very important. Usually we say he's a royalist or he's a Catholic. He's what to say, a cavalier or something like that. But John Milton, of course, his identity, his political identity, and his orientations were in continuous flux. It was a flexible one. He was not into any particular movement. He was not an ardent part of any movement. Okay. But we can see some changes. He had broad Protestant views, of course, but definitely we cannot say he continued to be a Protestant from the beginning till the end. It was in continuous flux. And he is a polyglot. Who is a polyglot? Polyglot means a person who is excelled in many languages. Okay, he can handle many languages very easily. That is what a polyglot. And he's a scholar. And then, of course, he's a poet, we know. So many attributions are there for him. And broadly, he had Protestant views. And his education, first, he educated at St. Paul's School. And then he was at Christ's College, Cambridge. Okay, Cambridge University is Christ College. And this particular name is very important or very interesting in case of Milton, that is Lady of Christ, because you might have seen John Milton's pictures. He had long hair. Okay, he had very long, thick hairs. So usually the people, one thing is like he's very mild, he's very silent, he's very lonely type of a person. And the second thing is because of his hair, long hair and delicate manners, he was called because he was not a person who had this manly features, okay, of that time. So he was called by his friends there in the Christ College that he is named. Given to Milton, the Lady of Christ. And he started writing at a very early age. And the earliest formal poem that he might have written, actually, in the beginning, he was paraphrasing the Latin elegies, Ovid's Latin elegies. Okay, that is how he started his poetic career, with the paraphrases of Psalms and Ovidian Latin elegies. And the first or the earliest formal poem that he has written of his own is considered to be Ode on the Death of a Fair Infant Dying of a Cough. Very interesting and lengthy title, right? Ode on the Death of a Fair Infant Dying of a Cough. That was the earliest formal poem that he has written. Then he has wrote one of the Latin elegies of his own. Usually he was paraphrasing the Ovidian elegies, no, Latin elegies. Then later, so from that time onwards, that is like his early 20s, 1920, that is the age in which he was writing all these things. So the first of his Latin elegies is Elegia Prima. Elegia Prima can be considered to be the first of his Latin elegies. Then he has written Nativity Ode. Actually, he wrote all these when he was studying in the Cambridge University, that is Christ College. The Nativity Ode, Ode on the morning of Christ's nativity. Sorry, or not Ode, on the morning of Christ's nativity. That is an ode, of course, Nativity Ode, and on the morning of Christ's nativity. There is a very top hill there in Christ College. The natural beauty is actually explained in many of his works with so much of beauty. So he used to sit alone, and he used to brood on the ideas of this natural beauty and all those things. So on the morning of Christ's nativity is the Nativity Ode that he has written during that time. And also he has wrote a sonnet. Okay, now that sonnet is popular with the name On Shakespeare. He is the one who has written a sonnet on Shakespeare. And that particular sonnet is now known as On Shakespeare only. But when he wrote it, the original title was The Epitaph on the Admirable Dramatic Poet W. Shakespeare. That was the full name of the sonnet that he has written. And during that time, though he had delicate manners, though he was mild, and though he was considered to be the Lady of the Christ, he had a disagreement with the Cambridge curriculum. Okay, the curriculum itself. And his tutor, William Chappell, both of them had some arguments. And William Chappell, led to a brief suspension. He got suspended from the university or the Christ College for a period of time. Actually, in his second year, okay, in the second year of his course, that is in 1627, he got suspended for a brief period. Actually, that's for he was not satisfied with the curriculum, and he challenged his tutor. The tutor and himself had lots and lots of confusions and conflicts together. So that ended up in his suspension. So these are his poems, and then other works of Milton we can see. The first early poems. The early poems are L'Allegro. Okay, L'Allegro. L'Allegro was in 1631, and the meaning of this particular term is happy man. And there is a companion poem for this, that is Il Pensereso. Okay, Il Pensereso means melancholy man. Happy man and melancholy man. But you can see the years in which he has written. It is the first one is written in 1631, and the second one is in 1645. There is a huge gap, but still they are known as the companion poems. The happy man contrasting with the companion pastoral poem Il Pensereso, which means the melancholy man. Actually, he is invoking the Greek goddesses, and like what is important about Milton is like it is not easy to read and understand the complete meaning and essence of his poems, because he'll be including so many allusions. We have seen in the first introduction itself that he was a scholar. He was a polyglot. He has huge knowledge on wide variety of topics. He was a person of huge experience, travel experience, bookish experience, and everything. So these are the two poems, two early poems, and then we can see this also comes under the early poems only, but still they are categorized as Horton poems. Okay, Horton poems. Like upon leaving Cambridge, after he had all his degrees from Cambridge, he moved briefly to his parents' house in Hammersmith. Okay, and from 1635 onwards, he spent almost 6 years at Horton. Horton is a place. Okay, so after his degree, after his graduation, he went to Horton and spent almost 6 years there in Horton. But he was not spending his years simply like that, but he was into private study. Okay, he was not belonging to any system or any colleges or any universities, but he was into an intensive private study, which made him one of the most popular learned English poets. Okay, all the poets are not that learned, but this person Milton is a very learned person, a scholar, and this intensive private study actually made him a very learned person. And the poems written during this period are called Horton poems. Okay, and we can see which are the poems. First is Upon the Circumcision, At a Solemn Music, On Time, Arcades, Comus, Lycidas. Okay, these are the 6 poems. Actually, the arcades and comus are two masks. We can see under that. These are two masks written by him, arcades and comus. And this is also, there are some, because arcades is written in 1632. Actually, the Horton poem starts with 1635, but still we consider it among the Horton ones. Okay, then Comus was in 1634. Uh, they were modeled on the masks of Ben Jonson only. We have seen Ben Jonson was the initiator of these masks and all. So it is, of course, modeled on Jonson's works. Okay, Jonson's mask served as a basis for especially Comus. For arcades also there are some references, but especially for Comus, Jonson's masks are a basis or a foundation. Okay, so these are the early poems of Milton, the two poems, 6 Horton poems, and among which also there are yeah, 1 second. Okay. So after all these poems, he started writing. This Lycidas is very important. If you can have a glance on Lycidas. Lycidas is an elegy on the death of his friend Edward King. Okay, he was his friend there in Christ's College, and he drowned to death at a very early age, Edward King. And so this is an elegy mourning on the death of Edward King. So this is one of the popular poems by John Milton. Usually you will get questions from this. Okay. So Lycidas, yeah, I was speaking about Lycidas. So Lycidas is something very important among John Milton's works. So you can have a glance on the details of Lycidas. Okay, okay. And after that, Okay. Shakti, am I audible? Hope I am audible. Uh, and then Milton, after that, he has been for a foreign tour. Okay, a foreign tour. That means he left England and he had a tour to the continent primarily for Italy. Okay, for approximately 15 months. He was there for the Italian tour and he made friends among so many Italian intellectuals. And one important person is Galileo. He met Galileo during that time. Galileo was in house arrest during that time. Okay, you know the controversies on Galileo and his telescope and how it affected his life and career and all those things. And Galileo was the only person, only contemporary person mentioned by name in Paradise Lost. It is not directly mentioned like Galileo, but the artist in the Tuscan Valley or something like that. It is mentioned like that. Okay, in Paradise Lost, he is the only contemporary person or the intellectual mentioned in Paradise Lost. So he met with Galileo and they had conversations and all those things. Then he learned the death of Charles Diodati. Charles Diodati was his close friend for whom he wrote his first poem. Okay, that actually made Milton sad. So all this happened in between. The 15 months of Italian journey actually enriched his, what to say, his career, his thoughts, his scholarship and everything. And then we can see the early prose of John Milton. Okay, so he has written some anti-prelatical tracts. Okay, anti-religious tracts, prose tracts against episcopacy. Okay, prose tracts against episcopacy. This person, Charles First, was dealing with, or he was forcing episcopacy to be there in Scotland. But Milton wrote something against this episcopacy, and that is called anti-prelatical tracts. There were 5 tracts there in this particular category. And of Reformation is one among them, of Reformation. Actually, the main idea of these pamphlets is that English Reformation had not been completed in the Tudor times. During the Tudor dynasty, that is during the period of Queen Elizabeth and her predecessors, this Reformation came along with Renaissance, right? The religious Reformation. So this person, Milton, was saying that the Reformation was not completed during that time. Still, people are confused with the religious reformation. So it is to be completed. This is what the major, actually, that is true. And this was what the major theme of his anti-prelatical tracts. And then he wrote another tract that is of education in 1644 of education because he became a private school master during that time and he wrote it in 1644, a short tract on of education. This is a form of letter. This prose work is written in the form of a letter to Samuel Hartlib. He is a scholar and an educational reformer. So he was in the form of a letter to this person, wrote this particular work that is of education. And he outlined the ideal curriculum, how an ideal curriculum should be, because from the Christ itself, he was not satisfied with the curriculum. Even Cambridge's curriculum was not satisfying Milton. So he was giving a format or an outline of an ideal curriculum, emphasizing the Greek and Latin, languages as means to learn directly the wisdom of classical antiquity that is to be studied, that is to be learned by the people. So he was insisting on that. Okay, so that is what all about of education that he has written in the form of a letter. Then comes the divorce tracts. Divorce tracts are very controversial, okay, very controversial, and that invited so many enmity for Milton. Actually, Milton, this is a contradiction. There is an irony. Milton had a very turbulent marital relationship. In 1643, at the age of 35, he married a 16-year-old girl. We can't say lady, old girl, that is Mary Powell. Okay, when he was 35, he married a 16-year-old girl, that is Mary Powell. A month later, okay, soon after a month of the marriage, she returned to her parents and did not come back until 1645. In 1643, he married, and for the next 2 years, she didn't turn up. And the emotional shock following her desertion provoked Milton to publish 4 pamphlets arguing for the legality and morality of divorce, because during that time, divorce was not legalized in Britain. That is not only during that time, even during the Victorian period, divorce was not a legal one, legally accepted one. It was not legalized. So, but as this lady is not with Milton, and Milton was thinking, what is the purpose of a marriage then? The lady is not with me. If the couple is a mismatched one, then what is the purpose of continuing with that relationship? So that is what his argument was. And he wrote 4 pamphlets arguing for the legality and morality that is considered immoral. So the morality of the divorce tracts and the doctrine and the discipline of divorce, which he wrote in 1643, is one among the divorce tracts. And it is not only arguing for the legality and morality of divorces, but is introducing a lot of, concepts, okay, concepts and ideas on women and all. Like you can see, the 16th and 17th centuries were characterized by misogyny. Misogyny means aversion towards women, or women were considered to be a substandard category or something like that. So this person was saying marriages were done solely for protection. Okay, and divorces were rare and illegal and expensive during that time, and there was no concept of love or sharing in marriage. It is exclusively for reproduction, and like women were considered to be potential temptresses and adulteresses. Okay, women are not moral. They are just to be married for making children, making the next generation. So they should not be treated with much reputation or respect. This was the concept during that time. And Milton believed that woman is certainly a subordinate to man. Milton had no objection to that point, but he was distanced from popular misogyny of that time. Of course, man is superior and the woman is inferior to man. That is fine, but we should not treat women in this way. This is what he said. And Milton, in his divorce tracts, he argued that divorce should be granted to mismatched couples. And he praised the bliss of wedded love, and he emphasized the role of conversation and conversation and companionship in marriage. It is very important to see how radical and forward his arguments are. If it is a marital relationship, definitely you should have good conversations and good companionship between the couples. Then only we can call it a successful marriage life. But that is not actually happening here. So if it is a mismatched couple, if the persons cannot be together with love and companionship, they should be divorced, and that should be moralized, legalized. But a person who had these kinds of concepts and opinions on marriage, and women had 3 marriages altogether, and none of his wives was with him till the end. That is the contradiction. Okay, so these are the content of his divorce tracts. So what happened? The authority was not that happy with the content of the divorce tracts of the people, because they are maintaining a structure. Okay, they are maintaining a structure. One second. Okay, there is some problem with the network or something, I guess. Okay, fine. So the authority was not that happy with the contents of the divorce tracts, and his Milton's views were controversial on marriage and divorce, and naturally it provoked oppositions from the authority. So what happened? A very important thing happened, that is the licensing order of 1643. Okay, you can see like Milton got married in 1643, and till 1645 he was alone, because soon after a month this lady left him. So with that, that provoked him, and he wrote all these divorce tracts claiming for this companionship and love, and otherwise it should be the relationship should be divorced and all those things. And that was not accepted by the authority during that time. So this licensing order or the licensing act came in 1643. And what is this licensing act all about? Pre-publishing censorship. If you want to publish something, before the publication, you have to get it censored. Okay, there will be an authority. An authority will be checking the content of the content of what you have written or what you have submitted. And then if the authority is happy, still we have censorships in films and all, right? So likewise, in books and all also censorship is there though. So that censorship act, that licensing order came in 1643 because of the divorce tracts of John Milton. And Milton was not ready to keep quiet against the censorship and licensing order. So he wrote Aeropagitica. Aeropagitica in 1644 is against this freedom of expression. People have the freedom of expression, and still that is the basis for the press and the freedom of expression, the media's freedom of expression. Okay, this is the base. So this work is very important, as well as the year is very important, 1644. You can connect it with Milton's marriage. 43 he got married. Soon after 1 month she left, so he started writing pamphlets on divorce. The divorce tracts were there, and in 1643 itself the authority got furious on the content of Milton's tracts, and they brought in pre-publishing censorship, that is licensing order of 1643. And again in 1644 he is writing Aeropagitica. Okay, so this is against this licensing act. Then again he wrote 3 extraordinary prose works even after that, that is History of Britain, that is in 1617. Then Artis Logica. Okay, that means, yeah, once again. Yeah, Artis Logica, that is art of logic. It is translated as art of logic in 1672. Actually, the Artis Logica is Latin. Okay, he has written it in Latin only. And then De Doctrina Christiana. Okay, that is an unfinished work which is found in the 19th century. That means on Christian doctrine. That is the translated version of this particular work. Okay, on Christian doctrine. So these are the 3 other extraordinary prose works written by Milton. And another important thing, I haven't included it in the PPT, but this is something important. Milton thought himself primarily as a poet, because people used to ask him, are you comfortable with writing prose or poetry? And during that time, Milton said, I am primarily or basically a poet. And he said his prose was written with his left hand. Okay, that is symbolically saying not exactly with his left hand, because if you are a right-handed person, which hand is important for you? Right hand, because with the right hand you will be doing all the important works. And if you want to defend something, if you are in a defensive mode, definitely you will be using your first hand. If you are writing something very important, you will be using your right hand. Okay, so what Milton symbolically mentioned is like he wrote his poems with the right hand and prose with the left hand. That means prose is comparatively of lesser importance than poetry in case of Milton. Okay, so what is considered to be the left hand, or what is considered to be written with the left hand of Milton? That is prose. That is for your information, and this is a popular saying by him. Reversing the right hand for poetry. He reserved his right hand for poetry, and he said his prose was written with his left hand. Okay, and then he wrote so many anti-monarchical pamphlets also. That means he was against Charles I. He was against the episcopal system. So he wrote some anti-monarchical pamphlets also. Okay. Then coming to his blindness. Hope you are familiar with that part of Milton's life, that he was blind after a period of time. When he was 44, okay, he was just 44, Milton's eyesight began to fall. And by 1654, Milton was totally blind. Okay, he was totally blind, probably due to glaucoma. We don't know exactly, but people usually say like it just because of the glaucoma that he became blind. And from then onwards, he had scribes to help him. So he dictated and they wrote. Okay, Andrew Marvell, one of the important metaphysical poets of that time, is one of the scribes of John Milton. And during this time, he wrote a sonnet on his blindness. Okay, on his blindness was written during this time. Milton's wife, Mary Powell, no, she came back, but she died in childbirth. And he married again, that is Catherine Woodcock, in 1656. Catherine Woodcock was his second wife. And this marriage was more successful than the first one, the former one. But just over a year later, Catherine also died in childbirth. During that time, many women died of childbirth. So Mary Powell as well as Catherine died of childbirth. And in his blindness, actually, Milton raised three daughters. Okay, Milton was the sole responsible person to take care of the children. So he raised three daughters out of his two wives, even in his blindness. And he has published a collection in 1645, that is poems. Okay, just among the prose works that he was writing, poems. The title itself is Poems. Poems was published. It's a collection of Milton's poems. So far we have discussed so many poems of him, no? So all those were included in this particular collection. Actually, this can be divided into two sections. One is English and Latin, because he was writing poetry both in Latin and English. And Milton identifies himself as a future poet in this works and republished these poems in 1673. That is what poems is a collection by Milton, and those poems that we have discussed so far are included in this particular collection. Then, of course, we know the important or the greatest poems of or the epics of John Milton, that is Paradise Lost, which came in 1667 first. Samson Agonistes, 1671. Paradise Regained, 1671. He's popular for all these works. And coming to Paradise Lost in 1667. It starts with what? Of man's first disobedience and the fruit of that forbidden tree whose mortal taste brought death into the world, and all our woo with the laws of Eden till on greater man restore us and regain the blissful seed. Sing heavenly muse that on the secret top of Ore or the Sinai didst inspire the shepherd who first taught the chosen seed in the beginning how heavens and earth rose out of chaos, or Eve Sion Hill. Actually, this is how Paradise Lost starts, okay, of man's first disobedience. Likewise, it goes. And coming to the themes, we can say his aim was to justify the ways of God to men. Okay, justify the ways of God to men. That is the theme or the major content. What is Paradise Lost all about? So you can answer to justify the ways of God to men. So it was like that. First, he planned it or published it with 10 books. Okay, book 1, book 2, likewise 10 books were there, and later it was reworked and there were 12 books. That is in the form of Virgil's Aeneid and the classical epic type. He just changed it. And I'll just say what is the content of all these books in a nutshell, in a single sentence. Actually, that is only possible as we don't have much time. Paradise Lost, the book 1, we can see the Satan. It starts in the middle. It doesn't go in a linear order. Okay, the epics usually don't go in a linear order. That is the usual pattern of epics. That is called in medias res in Latin. This particular format is called in medias res. That means it starts with the middle, and then you can see some flashbacks, and then the future part will also be following. Some films are in that way, no? Starts at the middle and we will get the earlier ideas later and it goes to the future. So likewise it goes. Book 1, we can see the fallen angels, Satan and his followers after the war in the heaven. They all got expelled from the heaven because they questioned the authority of the God. So Satan and followers are there in the hell now, and they are building their house of parliament, that is pandemonium. This particular word is very important, the house of parliament, or the place where they can be safe and they can be stayed. That is what Satan and followers are building, and that is called pandemonium. So Satan, his followers, and their present position after the war, after got expelled from the heaven, what is their present position? That is explained in book 1. And they are building the pandemonium. And in book 2, you can see the Satan opens a debate in pandemonium. So at the end of the book 1, you can see all the fallen angels, they entered pandemonium, and according to the hierarchy, they are sitting on various seats. And now it is the time for discussion, how to take revenge on God. Okay, because now their condition is very pathetic. So God is the reason for that. God is the one who expelled them from the heaven. So now they want to take revenge on God. So Satan opens the debate in pandemonium. In book 3, you can see God foresees the danger on man by people, because God already knows, God knows everything. So God foresees the danger on man. And at the same time, in book 3, you can see this Uriel is is an angel, and Uriel, Satan could trick Uriel, and Satan is now entering he is getting the way to the Garden of Eden, because after their expulsion from the heaven, God has created this Garden of Eden. The man and the woman, Adam and Eve, the two creations by God are there. So he wants to destroy the new creation of God. He wants to destroy the new creation of God. So he tricks Uriel and he finds the way to the Garden of Eden. And in book 4, Satan enters the Garden of Eden. You can see he enters the Garden of Eden through the Mount Nifes, and he disguises himself as a cormorant and a toad because he is very much confused what shape he should get, okay, to enter the Garden of Eden, and he somehow wants to take revenge by destroying the new creations of God. So in book 4 he successfully enters, but later he was found out and he thrown back, okay. Then in book 5, you can see Raphael. Raphael is one of the guardian angels of Adam and Eve. He warns man of the danger by Satan, and he gives explanations that such a war occurred in the heaven, and a lot of angels were against God, and they all got expelled from the heaven, and the God now foresees that they will be doing some danger to the man. So you should be very careful. So likewise, he is giving, Raphael is giving what warnings to this particular person, that is Adam. And then in book 6, you can see again it continues for a while. Book 6, a warning is again given to Adam and Eve, okay, so with so much of explanations. Then in book 7, you can see the creation of the new world, and Adam and Eve is described, because when they were explaining this, Adam and Eve is new to this world, so they don't know what exactly what is Satan, who is Satan, and why he is so much of angry on the God. They don't know anything, so many things, and Raphael is giving replace the creation of the new world, including Adam and Eve, as described in book 7. And in book 8 also, Adam continues to ask about the heavenly bodies, and he gets the reply from Raphael. So by book 8, it is very clear for Adam and Eve about the background story. So through this book 6, 7, and 8, we are getting all the flashbacks. Okay, flashbacks, though it starts in the middle, Paradise Lost starts in the middle, we will get all the flashbacks with this book 6, 7, and 8. But in book 9, what happens? In spite of all the warnings, they fail. And so Adam and Eve, actually, they got the warning that they should not be separated. So that they can identify the issues from outsiders, especially by Satan. But our Eve is suggesting that we can be separated so that we can do the works in a very, faster way. She's convincing Adam like that, and Adam is also, the Adam at that time also, he is warning Eve that okay, Satan may be coming, so you should be careful and all those things. And though Eve is very conscious, she couldn't handle the temptation by Satan. Satan in the form of a serpent enters, and he is tempting Eve, and he's making Eve eat the forbidden fruit. Okay, and he is offering everything. You will be like God if you eat the fruit of this forbidden tree, and that is why God is forbidding you from eating this. So they are saying like that, and Eve is believing that okay, this is how it is happening, and so she eats, and she is even making Adam eat that, and it happens. And in book 10, you can see the Son of God pronounces the infliction of the punishment on man. Man has to do hard labor. The woman has to undergo the pain of this delivery, pregnancy, and all those things. And then they have to toil on the earth, everything. And book 11, the Son intercedes the Father on behalf of man. Okay, the Son will come. the doomsday will come, and your the person to rescue you will come one day. Likewise, the Son of God, that is Christ, is giving this kind of an assurance. And in book 12, you can see Michael leads Adam and Eve to the gates of Eden. Now, hereafter, they cannot be there in the Garden of Eden. They go forth sad, but yet they are consoled with the hope of salvation. Okay, Son of God will come one day, and they will give, they will get the salvation. So likewise it goes. So this is the content of Paradise Lost. And of course, this is a literary epic poem in blank verse, divided into verse paragraph. And originally, I told you, it was planned for 10 books and later rearranged in 12 books and printed in 1660 with explanatory notes. And this is the first poem to be printed with explanatory notes, because it is not easy. It's not at all easy to read Paradise Lost. Have you ever tried reading the original text of Paradise Lost? If not, please just try. You will understand. You need lots and lots of dictionaries and reference texts with you. Then only you will understand. Then subject is, of course, the fall of man. And he is invoking the muses 4 times in this epic. Okay, 4 times. In book 1, he is invoking the heavenly muse, because invoking the muse, that means the goddess of poetry. Invoking the muse is very important in the case of epic. So he is invoking the heavenly muse. Then in book 3, he is invoking the holy light. Then in book 7, he is invoking Urania, that is the muse of astronomy. And in book 9, again, he is invoking Urania, the celestial patroness. Okay, so likewise, he is invoking the muse for 4 times in Paradise Lost. Book 1, book 3, book 7, and book 9. You can see this. And then Satan, if we say Paradise Lost elaborately, it takes like almost, more than 10 or 20 hours to speak on Paradise Lost. It is structured like that. Each and every character is important, the structure is important, the grand style is important, everything is important. And Satan in Paradise Lost is actually the most discussed part in the case of Paradise Lost. Okay, from the early 19th century onwards, Satan has been regarded as the protagonist of Paradise Lost. And William Blake, one of the romantics, he said, without his knowledge, he was in the devil's party. That is what William Blake said about Paradise Lost and Satan, the character. Because Milton was trying to justify the ways of God to man, but without his knowledge, he was giving so much of importance to Satan, and he was giving a very heroic, image to Satan. That is what actually happened. And the character study of Satan is very interesting in the case of Paradise Lost. I am purposefully deviating from that topic because that is one of the favorite parts of mine. So if I start talking on that, I'll go on with that. That's why. So many people like Dryden, Samuel Johnson, Joseph Addison, Richard Bentley, so many people commented on a Paradise Lost and with Satan, specifically with Satan. Then Blake, and during the Romantic period, Wordsworth, Blake, and all these people, okay, considered Satan to be a very important figure. Then Matthew Arnold, T.S. Eliot, so many people. They had comments on Paradise Lost. Then Paradise Regained is comparatively a brief epic, connecting or comparing with Paradise Lost. It was in 1671. Again, this is a theme of temptation. It deals with the theme of temptation, as in Comus and Paradise Lost. And the protagonist is the Son of God, that is the Christ. Christ is actually not presented in a divine manner, but Christ is given with heroic mannerisms of a man. So Christ faces temptation as a heroic man. That is what the content of Paradise Regained. Okay, and the heroism of Satan is absent here. In Paradise Lost, Satan is a hero. Satan has so many heroic expressions and explanations given by Milton, but that heroism of Satan is absent here. Maybe it is a purposeful move. And more limited in scope than Paradise Lost. In Paradise Lost, all these books were discussing different parts or different aspects. But in Paradise Regained, you can see it is exclusively confined to this theme of temptation and more limited in scope. It's just only 4 books or something like that. So that is what about Paradise Regained. And Samson Agonistes is another work that is a tragic closet drama. Okay, tragic closet drama modeled on the Greek tragedy. And it published along with Paradise Regained. And David Deutsches, one of the critics, he says like this is the only successful Greek tragedy in English. Okay, the only successful Greek tragedy in English, because this work is also very popular. And you can see the theme is biblical. It is taken from the book of Judges in Bible. Okay, the theme is taken from the book of Judges in Bible. Theme is biblical, but the style is Hellenic. Hellenic means the classical Greek style. Okay. Though the theme is biblical, the style is Hellenic. And agonistus, Samson agonistus means wrestler or champion. Actually, in this work, is like first of all, Samson is very much he failed in acknowledging his strength and all, and later he is acknowledging it. He is understanding, or he is realizing now that what is his strength and all those things. So it's a resurrection kind of a thing like that. That is the content of this work. And unity of time is maintained. It is in the form of a Greek tragedy, no? So the unity of time is maintained. And people usually say this is an allegorical version of Milton's own life. Okay, people usually say like that. And the final one is like sonnets. Milton has written 23 sonnets during his lifetime, not continuously, but intermittently. He has written this 23 sonnets, and he adopted the Petrarchan style for sonnet. Okay, the Petrarchan sonnet style is adopted, and he has given a new vigor to the sonnets during that time. On the late massacre in Piedmont is one among them. On his blindness, he has written during his blind days. That is another one. So these are the important sonnets that he has written, or in total 23 sonnets. And on his blindness ends with, or the last line is, they also serve who only stand and wait. Okay, those who wait for a long time, those who stand for a long time with a particular intention, they will also serve. Okay, that is very important line. Then about Milton's grand style, he's a poet of sublime. So numerous allusions, references, archaic and Latinized vocabulary, esoteric expressions. Esoteric expressions means only a particular group of people who are well versed in that category will understand. Normal people will not understand. And extended similes, recurring images or motifs which convey layers or meanings. He includes all these things, and that is why it is called grand style. The style is called grand style. And this term grand style was first used by Matthew Arnold, and Milton's grand style is a book by Christopher Ricks in 1967. So Milton is known for his grand style because of the use of his allusions, references, archaic and Latin